Maid Cafes. A place where cute girls come up to you dressed up as a maid, all excited and chatty. And where the typical customer is an otaku, someone who is pictured to be socially awkward, even described by other critics as one who has lost touch with reality. Sounds harsh, right? That's the stereotype, but it barely scratches the surface. And frankly, it's not a fair way to look at the customers, the maids, or Japanese culture as a whole. I mean, for starters, if you were expecting the place to be sus, the first rule of every maid cafe is no touching. So no, it's not that kind of place. There are more rules that are enforced and we'll talk about them, but despite these rules, maid cafes still have a reputation for attracting perverted men. Is this really all maid cafes have to offer? What really goes on in one? And how did maid cafes become such a uniquely Japanese thing? We'll look at all of this, and by the end of this video, you might want to go to one yourself. The first thing to know is anyone who goes to a maid cafe is not going for the coffee or the overpriced omurice. To no one's surprise, it's the maids who provide an entertaining, memorable experience that keeps customers coming back. And this idea of a female entertainer is actually deeply woven into Japanese society. Looking quickly at the Geisha, the Jokyu, and the Hostess will give us a better understanding of how maid cafes fit within Japanese culture. All their roles blend a mix of eroticism, gender hierarchies, and commerce, and it's fascinating to see how these women weave charisma into their trade. Starting first with the Geisha. Geisha first appeared during Japan's Tokugawa period, right when red light districts were beginning to emerge. This is also when a huge difference crystallized between Japan and the West, the place of sex in society. In Japan, sex is seen as a natural, essential part of life, similar to eating or sleeping. Shinto mythology and creation stories like those of Izanami and Izanagi, rooted in fertility rituals, see sexuality as a force to be celebrated. This is very different to Christian perspectives, which see sex as sinful. Now, why are we talking about this difference in seeing sex? Because a lot of these female entertainers who were skilled in the art, educated, intelligent, independent, did have sex with their patrons. From a Western perspective, the knee-jerk response might be shock or confusion. Why would a woman lower herself to sell sex when she can do all these other things? But from the Japanese perspective, why not do it? The stigma attached to commercial sex in the West being shameful and degrading was not shared by Japan. And we can see this difference in attitude through vocabulary. In Japanese, the word for commercial sex literally translates to selling spring, a world away from blunt derogatory terms like whoring in English. With this crucial difference highlighted, we can now appreciate what geisha actually did. Geisha were entertainers. They set the mood at gatherings, led conversations, and performed in the arts. It often took years for geisha to master their skills of singing, storytelling, dancing, playing musical instruments, pouring tea, writing poetry, playing go, and calligraphy. They were talented, badass women, and sometimes geisha chose to sleep with patrons. But sex was just one part of the wider package, never the sole focus, and it carried no shame. Geisha were not the same as sex workers. They offered a blend of artistry, companionship, and occasionally romance. This is a really important distinction and is highlighted by Galbraith, who says the Tokugawa period was the first time in Japanese history that not only sold sex, but also commodified conversation, companionship, and a unique form of eroticism by women for male entertainment. Geishas basically walked so maids could run. But we're not quite up to maids yet, because in the 1930s, geisha had been largely replaced in popularity by Jokyu, cafe waitresses who wore kimono or aprons, brought food, and entertained guests with conversation. Like geisha, Jokyu were not primarily employed to sell sex, although sexual encounters sometimes occurred. After World War II, hostesses took over from Jokyu, and today, hostess clubs form a significant part of Japan's entertainment industry. These clubs, along with bars and sex work venues, fall under the category of mizushobai, or the water trade. Chaplin explains that this name originates from the Tokugawa era, when these establishments were often located close to riverbanks. The term also reflects the concept of the floating world, or ukiyo, where reality is suspended and an alternate world exists inside these venues. It's a pretty poetic description. Like the geisha and the jokyu, hostesses serve customers and add to the atmosphere of the venue. However, they also facilitate conversation between patrons, who are often co-workers attending an after-work party. Hostesses will help break the ice by initiating topics of conversation for co-workers to bond over. Across all these entertainment venues, female performers, whether Geisha, Jokyu, or Hostess, skillfully create an intimate, enjoyable ambience for their patrons. In many ways, maid cafes operate similarly, just tailored to the interests of the 21st century. Which brings us to the question, how did maids become the symbol of this scene? Because last time I checked, maids in Victorian uniforms are a very British thing. So how then did the British maid become a cultural icon of Japan? Part of it is the fantasy tied to British maids, their image of servitude, innocence, and subtle sensuality. And the other part is because Japan is facing a deep and growing loneliness crisis that is only getting worse. The British maid is often described by academics as a symbol of dependence, female passiveness, naivety, sexual vulnerability, youthfulness, diminished social status, and domesticity. And they were viewed this way because maids were typically quite young, sometimes as young as 12 or 13. They also worked in their employer's home, far from family and friends who would be able to look out for them. This situation created a significant power imbalance, leaving maids vulnerable to sexual harassment or assault. And it was this cultural backdrop that inspired the first appearances of maids in Japanese media, particularly within the gaming industry. Maids became popular characters in erotic computer games and later in dating sims. The first physical maid pop-up in Akihabara was the result of a popular maid game, Welcome to Pia Carrot 2. The pop-up was so popular, a few years later in 2001, the first permanent maid cafe was open for business. Much like the mizushou by venues we discussed earlier, maid cafes create spaces of intimacy and belonging as maids build relationships with their customers. We'll take a deeper look at how they do this very soon, but I wanted to emphasize maid cafes being a place where you can build connections and community because Japan is going through a loneliness crisis. The term muen shakai, or relationless society, captures this growing social isolation. Perhaps the most haunting example of this crisis is the phenomenon of muenshi, solitary deaths, where people living alone die without relatives or neighbors noticing for weeks or even months. This isn't the only crisis we're seeing though, because our privacy is also at greater risk than ever before. Think about how much we use the internet now, how our banking and personal details are all online. And if you're lazy like me, how you might reuse the same password across different sites. Which is a really bad idea, by the way, because that's how I got hacked and it's been a nightmare sorting things out. I now have a different password for every service I access, and I can only do this because I have a password manager. I use Proton Pass, developed by the Proton team in Switzerland, where privacy is at the core of their mission. Proton Pass creates unique passwords for every site you use, so don't worry, you don't need to remember this gibberish looking chain 26 times. This password will be auto-filled whenever you log in, and it syncs across all your devices. It's a game changer, requires no effort on your side, and is the best way to keep all your important stuff safe. Proton Pass is part of the greater Proton ecosystem, which includes Proton Mail, an email service that will never sell your data to advertisers. Because yeah, major email services do that, reading your emails to build a better profile of you. If you never knew that, don't worry, I had no idea too, but that's so icky. With Proton Mail though, all your emails are encrypted, so only you and the receiver can read the message as intended. You have full control over your information, and your data will never be harvested or monetized with Proton. I truly stand behind Proton's commitment to protect our privacy. It's super easy to get started with them, and I can't recommend them enough. Check out both Proton Pass and Proton Mail for free using my link in the description below. Thank you Proton for sponsoring this video, and now back to Japan's loneliness crisis. The increase in single-person households and weakening relationships largely happened after World War II, when Japan was rebuilding its economy and millions of Japanese moved from rural areas with their tight-knit communities to big foreign cities where they knew no one. And this was just the beginning of Japan's relationless society. Following the lost decade in the 1990s, employment became notably more unstable and many people were forced to rely on part-time and casual jobs. This not only fueled a sense of anxiety about the future, where do I go next? It also created uncertainty in people about their own identity, as what we do feeds into a big part of who we are. Both the shift towards single-person households and greater economic instability has led to many feeling alienated, isolated, and without support in Japan. It was within this social context that maid cafes flourished. These venues offered intimacy and connection to people who felt lonely. And since maids were first popularized in Japanese culture through video games, the initial clientele that was drawn to the concept of maid cafes were primarily otakus, In the 90s, otakus did not have a good reputation. They were thought to be socially awkward, described by Bryan as being averse to creating personal relationships, as they preferred to stay locked up in their rooms at home where they collect whatever assuages their passions. Scholars like Cam went even further, labeling otakus as failed men. Much of the stigma traces back to the crimes of the infamous Otaku killer, one of Japan's worst serial killers. His horrific acts, coupled with his revealed obsession over manga and anime, transformed the word otaku, which had once been a relatively neutral term, into a label for someone consumed by manga and anime to the point of being out of touch with reality. The fact that otakus frequented maid cafes led to people viewing it with a bit of prejudice, and that stigma still exists today. But given everything we've covered, from Japan's long history of female entertainers to its modern loneliness crisis, I ask for you to keep an open mind as we finally wander into the floating world that is Japan's maid cafes. Before entering a cafe, a maid stationed outside will ask if you've been to one before. If it's your first time, she'll tell you that there are certain rules you must follow. 1. Never touch the maids. 2. Never ask for their contact details. 3. Never inquire about their work hours. 4. Never try to flirt or pick them up. 5. Never wait outside for the maids as they arrive or leave for work. Once you understand and agree to these rules, you pay an entry fee and then you're allowed inside. Your arrival is announced and all the maids greet you either as master or princess and welcome you home. Inside the cafe, you'll spot two types of customers. Regulars usually come alone and may sit near each other but don't really interact, often absorbed in their phones or quietly watching the maids go around their duties. And tourists, who come in groups and chat among themselves after being served their food, almost like they're in a typical cafe. But of course, this isn't one. Maid cafes are unique because maids put in extra effort to make you feel special with every interaction, but most of this attention comes at a cost. For example, when you sit down, a maid will come over to take your order. Later, when your food or drink arrives, a maid will then present it with a special ritual or performance and invite you to join in. Here's an example of what that looks like. These rituals are repeated every time you order a dish. It may sound boring or repetitive to some of us, but for many regular patrons, they actually look forward to the familiarity of these interactions. In some way, it feels a bit like playing a game. There's a set dialogue and routine to go through with the maid character, and that can be comforting for many. According to Fanaska, these repeated interactions build affection and connection, and over time create a sense of community. These rituals also act as icebreakers, helping maids start conversations with you as they make you feel cared for. However, Bryan, in a study of maid cafes, points out that this attention can be a double-edged sword. Once your food or drink is served, you're often left alone as maids move on to other paying customers. He describes how this made him feel detached, even disassociated from the atmosphere of the place. The cozy, happy buzz faded away, and all that was left was a space I felt isolated from. If you want the maid's attention again, the cafe system lets you pay for extra activities that will facilitate more interaction. And here's where the regulars and the casuals likely branch off. Casual tourists, after being served their food, will be happy to enjoy the rest of their time with other company. Regulars who come alone may feel compelled, like Bryan, to purchase more interactions. And this is exactly what he does. On his second visit, after being served his drink and left alone again, Bryan decides to purchase a checky or a Polaroid picture with a maid. This experience is often a big deal because of the physical closeness that happens as you pose together. Once the photo comes out, the maid will then decorate it with a cute personalized message, draw little hearts around it, and turn the photo into a memorable keepsake from the cafe. Regulars often collect these checkies, trying to get one with every maid, and cafes encourage this by offering limited edition checkies during special occasions like a maid's birthday or anniversary. Beyond checkie, maid cafes also offer other ways to boost customer-maid interaction, though this varies from store to store. Some hold hourly events for more engagement, while others provide photo spots where customers can snap pictures of maids in themed settings, like this cafe, Candy Fruits, where a maid is pictured here posing in a setting of a girl's bedroom. As you can see, there are many ways for customers to interact with maids, but most require payment. After Patron asked the maid if he could buy a checky, the maid was instantly happy to talk to him again and engage him in conversation, and he felt like he was part of the cafe's vibrant atmosphere once more. What we're seeing here is the use of attention and affection to encourage spending, which is what Henry Jenkins calls effective economics. It's not exactly manipulation, but you are deliberately building bonds to motivate customers to buy more off you. That's the whole business model for maid cafes. Make customers happy, build relationships with them, and hopefully they'll come back. Yes, there is a profit motive here, but oftentimes maids and regulars do have a genuine relationship and build a strong sense of community. One regular, Dragon, says this cafe isn't just a place I eat, it's a place I belong. That's why I always come back here. I don't go to other cafes. This is where I want to spend my time. For many regulars, the maid cafe is their home. In a relationless society, this is where they found belonging. But it's not only the customers who benefit. Maids themselves also enjoy the work and the connections they form. In an illuminating study by Bafeli and Yamaki focused on maids working in the cafes, many maids stated they were otakus themselves and they enjoyed bonding with customers over similar interests. Others dreamed of becoming idols and planned to use their exposure at maid cafes to slowly build a following. The work environment also helped some maids boost their self-esteem. One maid, Mako, stated, "I was never very confident about my appearance. When I was a student, I was often bullied. One reason I became a maid was to build confidence in myself. I've only been a maid for a year, so I'm still learning to accept myself. My first goal is to become someone who can learn to love themselves." The positive attention and affection from customers has helped Mako grow, see value in herself, and become more confident. Another maid, Mina, describes herself as being negative and pessimistic, but since joining the cafe and interacting with all kinds of princesses and masters, she realized how much support she gets. She now feels responsible for their happiness. When she's happy, her customers are happy too. Mina says she's become very positive and light as a result. At first glance, the maids in Japanese maid cafes may seem like they're as passive and as powerless as the British Victorian inspiration, but this power dynamic is really subversed. In Japanese maid cafes, it's the maid who holds the power and runs the show. They're charming, confident, and build connections in an increasingly solitary society. Some people don't need that kind of connection, and that's fine, but for others, this connection means the world to them. Maid cafes are sometimes judged for their service, and there is a stereotype around their regulars. But in today's era, where genuine community is hard to find, why look down on a space where both staff and guests can share joy without harm? Japan's tradition of female entertainers runs deep, and maid cafes are simply the latest chapter. So what do you think? Would you go and try one? Or if you've already gone, how was your experience? If you made it to the end, I'd love for you to subscribe. It's a small action that helps me make more videos like this one for you. A huge thanks, as always, to my patrons for their wonderful support. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!